Morning all and a very warm welcome back to Sunrise. You'll probably have noticed pride flags popping up all over London and everywhere in the UK, particularly, in fact, on the high street. Are companies just paying lip service to LGBT rights? Should they actually be doing more to help? We are asking in our talking point today, is Pride becoming too corporate? Well, here to talk it over is the journalist and author of Queer Intentions, Amelia Abraham, and the drag queen, Vanity von Glow. Guys, lovely to see you. Thank you so much for coming in. Amelia, can I actually start with you? And, you know, people in glass studios shouldn't throw stones, so I should point out the fact that outside this building we've got a big plastic whale dressed in Pride colours on the Sky campus as well. I mean, what is your view on all of this? Is business really assisting the LGBTQ community, or are they just taking advantage of it?
I think it's case by case, and I think sometimes we know and we can feel immediately when it's not genuine, and sometimes we don't know how much company is doing to support Pride. I mean, you walk down the street, on my way to work I walked past Ladbrokes betting shop, Pret. They've all got rainbow flags, a pub with a rainbow flag outside. It's really hard to know which brands are doing what, but when I go to the parade myself, I do feel like there is a little bit too much branding. You want to see more political messaging. You don't want to see endless logos for companies. It feels a bit it leaves me feeling a bit empty inside, I think.
And Vanity, what is your view? I mean, I've been to Pride a good few times over the years, and it's always been, from my perspective, more about the partying than the kind of the corporate side of things.
I think it says more about you than it says about anything.
I think it probably does.
A Scotsman with a drink in his hand.
Obviously, but at the same time, you can't help but notice that you've got, you know, the armed forces are there. You've got companies left, right, and centre.
Well, I think to follow from what Amelia is saying, it's true that we don't necessarily know how much specific companies are doing when we see the flags being flown on the high street or the plastic overlays on the windows. But what we can be certain of is that they are actually doing that particular thing, which is aiding in our visibility as a community. So while we may not be aware of Ladbrokes' employment policy, apart from that legally they obviously have to abide by what's been agreed in law, we know that they are they're stepping into the same experience that we do in saying that it's okay to be LGBT+. That within itself is kind of radical. That's what Harvey Milk was arguing for when he asked all of gay Americans to come out, to be visible, and that could be a tool for political change. So I think that's useful in and of itself. I don't need to know too much more about what the companies are doing, assuming that they're not, you know, pushing their poor gay employees off buildings.
We had this week, though, figures out that LGBT plus workers are paid almost £7,000 less on average than straight workers. It's one thing for companies to talk the talk, isn't it? But are they all walking the walk?
Exactly, and I think what we need to see is companies supporting LGBTQ causes all year round as well. So what we'll see a lot, for one example is in the beauty industry, a lot of beauty brands will put out like a product around Pride and donate maybe a small fraction of the sales to an LGBTQ organisation, but that's just for 1 month of the year and it's just one small fraction. So what are you doing for the rest of the year? And that's, I think, how we can tell it's just sort of marketing, because it's just linked to this sort of one moment where there's a lot of eyes on the brand.
Yeah, it's not just about 1 week or 1 month. It requires a permanent cultural shift here, Vanity.
Yes, but at the same time, it's exciting to be living in one of the most fortunate places in the world to be LGBT+. You know, it wouldn't have been conceivable to have this level of investment in visibility from organisations 10 years ago, and it's certainly not possible. I know Amelia's travelled a lot around the world and is aware that you can't get this kind of support in other countries. That's cause for celebration. I feel like there's an instinct sometimes in our LGBT community to over-criticise, and it's a very fashionable view to be frustrated with the capitalist elements of these sorts of displays.
I mean, you mentioned just a moment ago, I mean, you were obviously joking about organisations pushing their gay employees, you know, off a building, but, you know, there are parts of the world in which that is still happening with gay people. Is it perhaps, is the area in which perhaps the big corporations that are espousing their LGBTQ credentials, is the one area in which they could actually make a difference is in their dealings with these despotic, restrictive regimes in which gay people are on a daily basis being punished and killed?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Vanity mentioned I travelled for my book and I went to Belgrade, for instance, where Pride is quite recent. And there, no brand will sponsor Pride because it would be so bad for business to be affiliated with LGBTQ+ people. So when we're looking at these really, really big global corporations that are in a position to sponsor Pride, how can they be supporting Pride in countries where it's really difficult to have a Pride because no one will sponsor it?
It is worth noting there will be some companies, of course, and we should praise those companies that set up shop abroad and take with them the values of our culture and our approach towards LGBT plus concerns here. When they take those to those other countries, be that in how they employ people and how they protect workers' rights, in countries where perhaps the government aren't doing so.
I wonder if we might just speak just in more general terms about Pride, because the statistics out this morning, the level of bullying and abuse that young gay people are experiencing, frankly, shocked me. I thought there had been a generational shift. I mean, in terms of the visibility of gay people, I mean, Pride is still hugely significant, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say is that it feels a little bit like there is all this solidarity and support around Pride from brands and also from people coming to Pride. Yeah. However, if we look at some of the recent stories in the news about LGBTQ+ people being attacked on the streets of Britain, I think it should maybe be a reminder that we haven't come quite as far as one big Pride party would have us believe. So while Pride is really important, I completely agree, I think we also need to think about what we're doing in terms of teaching LGBTQ education in schools to perhaps prevent these types of attacks.
Well, because Pride, of course, is about two things. It's about the reality as we have it now. It's also about the reality that we want in the future. So a celebration of how far we've come. I think there's so much celebration to be, there should be celebration of everything that we've achieved so far. But there is also still work to do. I think particularly the bulk of the work for LGBT people we should be really looking outwards. We should be looking at the rest of the world. And it's very frustrating. It's hard for us to know what to do about places like Chechnya, where we have limited scope for affecting change. But I think that that's where the real mountains are. Of course, it's unacceptable that there's violence towards gay people. Of course, it's unacceptable that trans people are unfortunately, statistically more likely to be on the receiving end of violence and hatred. But I think that the real ladder to climb is going to be outside of the United Kingdom on these questions.
Indeed, 50 years on from Stonewall, I wonder where we're going to be 50 years from today. Vanity, Amelia, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.